I only meant to drop her off. Keys still in my hand, one foot already turned back toward the truck. The engine still ticking as it cooled behind me. Then the door opened, and the porch light caught her mother's face. She didn't look surprised to see a stranger on her step. She looked at me the way you look at someone you've already heard 100 stories about. She smiled, wiped her hands on a dish towel, and said, softly, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world, "I was wondering when she'd bring you here." Let me back up. Because a sentence like that doesn't land right unless you understand the man it landed on. My name's Adam Kessler. I'm 34, and I fix old houses for a living. Not flip them, not gut them and slap in new floors and call it charm. I mean, I sit with a house until I understand how it was built, and then I bring it back the way it was meant to be. I'm a restoration architect in Fort Collins, Colorado, at a small firm called Meridian Heritage, and most days you'll find me kneeling on a 100-year-old staircase with a chisel and a flashlight, learning the mind of a carpenter who died before I was born. I live alone in a house I've been rebuilding one room at a time for the last 2 years. It was a wreck when I bought it. Sagging porch, cracked plaster, a kitchen that hadn't been touched since the 60s. People asked me why I'd take on something so broken. I never had a good answer, except that I understood it. I knew what it was to be sturdy underneath and falling apart on the surface. It wasn't always like this. There was a version of me who wore good shoes and worked at a big commercial firm down in Denver, chasing glass towers and the kind of money that looks like success from far away. I was good at it. I was rising fast. And then, 4 years ago, my father died. His name was Ray. He was a carpenter, a real one, the kind who could look at a warped door and tell you which winter had done it. He taught me everything I actually know: how wood breathes, how to feel for rot with the back of your knuckle, how to leave a thing better than you found it. Losing him cracked something open in me that all the glass towers in Denver couldn't fill. Around that same time, my marriage came apart. Her name was Vanessa. We wanted different lives, it turned out. She wanted the towers and the parties. I wanted to go home to the smell of sawdust. We had no children, nothing to hold us together, once the wanting pulled in opposite directions, and so we let go. The divorce was quiet, which is somehow worse than loud. Loud at least means something is still burning. After that, I did the thing that made no sense to anyone who knew me. I left the big firm. I left Denver. I came up to Fort Collins and took a job that paid a third of what I'd been making, restoring the exact kind of old, honest houses my father used to love. Everyone thought I was throwing my life away. Maybe I was. It felt more like walking toward the only thing that still smelled like him. There's a thing I remember about my father, and I need you to hold on to it, because it turns out to be the whole story. My father worked late every night of my childhood, and every night the porch light was on when he finally came home. That was my mother's doing. She'd flip it on at dusk and leave it burning until his headlights swung into the drive. It was her way of saying something without saying it. Someone here is still waiting for you. You are expected. Come home. I didn't understand how much that light meant until it was gone. After the divorce, standing in the driveway of my half-finished house in the dark, fumbling for my keys, I realized no one had left a light on for me in years. No one was waiting up. The house was just a house, dark windows and a cold porch, and I was just a man who fixed things that other people had loved once. I got used to it. That's the part I'm not proud of. You can get used to almost anything, including being unwaited for. And then there was Meridian, and the work, and eventually there was her. At Meridian I met a junior architect named Kara Ellison, 29, quiet, careful hands, the kind of person who notices the grain of a banister before she notices the room. I didn't think much of it at first. She was just the new hire, good at her job, easy to be around. I had no idea, standing there in my safe and settled loneliness, that she was already the beginning of the answer to a question I'd stopped letting myself ask. For 2 years, Kara and I worked side by side, and I mistook every kind thing she did for professionalism. That's the part that embarrasses me now, looking back. Because the signs were everywhere, all along, and I read every single one of them wrong. She started at Meridian in the fall, and by the second week she'd figured out my coffee. I take it black, but not just any black. There's a specific dark roast at the place 2 blocks from the office, and I take it scalding. One morning it was just there on my desk. Exactly right. No note. I assumed someone had gotten the order confused. The next week it happened again. And the week after that, I told myself the shop must have a system. I never once thought to wonder how a coffee shop would know which desk was mine. She stayed late the night we almost lost the Fenwick staircase. It was an old spiral, black walnut, and a subcontractor had let water get to the base of it. I was up on the scaffolding at 8 at night, trying to save 200 years of joinery, everyone else long gone home, and Kara just quietly didn't. She held the work light. She handed me tools before I asked for them. She learned the rhythm of what I needed and matched it, hour after hour, until past midnight, and when we finally got the newel post stabilized, she looked at it like it mattered as much to her as it did to me. I thought, what a dedicated young architect. I actually thought that. Those exact dull words. She remembered my father's birthday. I never told her it was my father's birthday. I'd mentioned Ray a handful of times. The way you mention a father you're still grieving, sideways, never making a thing of it. But one October morning, she set that scalding coffee down and left. Next to it, a single pastry from the good bakery, and she said, "Thought today might be a hard one," and then she was gone before I could ask how she knew. I told myself she was just thoughtful. She was thoughtful, but it was more than that, and some cowardly, careful part of me knew it, and chose not to look. Here's what I understand now that I didn't understand then. Kara had been paying the kind of attention to me that you only pay to someone you've already decided about. She wasn't studying a coworker. She was memorizing a person she'd fallen for, doing it so quietly that I could walk through it every day and feel only warm and never once feel seen. Then came Larkspur. Larkspur House was the biggest thing our firm had ever gone after a grand old heritage home the city wanted, restored, and reopened to the public, and the bid was enormous, and Meridian was fighting for it against firms 3 times our size. For weeks it swallowed all of us. Late nights, spread sheets, drawings and redrawings, the whole office running on burnt coffee and nerves. That particular week, Kara's car was in the shop. A brake job, she told me, when I noticed her getting dropped off in the mornings. It was going to be a few days. I didn't think anything of it. Cars break. That's what cars do. What I didn't know, what I only pieced together much later, was that Kara had gone to our coordinator, a bright, talkative woman named Nina Alvarez, and quietly asked to swap her late shift pairing. Kara had traded her way onto the same nights as me. Not dramatically. Not obviously. Just a small, careful adjustment nobody would ever question. A woman without a car, staying late on the same nights as the man who happened to be able to give her a ride. You already see it. Of course you do. That's the thing about telling a story after you know how it ends. You want to reach back into your own past and shake yourself. She engineered a chance, not a trap. A chance. A door, left open, in case I ever chose to walk through it, but I didn't see any of that. I just saw Kara, staying late again, at the drafting table across from mine, the office quiet around us, the good kind of tired settling into both of us as the drawings finally came together, and around 11 at night, when we packed it in, and she reached for her phone to arrange a ride. I said the most natural thing in the world. "Don't bother. I'll run you home. It's practically on my way." It wasn't practically on my way. I want that on the record. Her place was clear across town, but the words were out before I'd checked them, and she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something caught between hope and fear, and she said, "You sure?" And I said, "Course, I'm sure," and that was that. The drive was the best 20 minutes I'd had in longer than I wanted to admit. We talked about nothing. About the Fenwick staircase. About her growing up in Colorado. About the way the mountains looked in October. About my father. A little. And she listened to the parts about him, the way you listen when you actually want to understand a person and not just wait for your turn to talk. The heater hummed. The streetlights slid by. And I noticed, somewhere in there, that I didn't want the drive to end. and I told myself that was just the loneliness talking. Then we turned onto her street, and I saw the house, and I saw the light. It was a modest place, older, well-kept, the kind of home I'd have loved to work on. And on the porch, glowing warm and gold against the blue dark, was a single lantern, lit and waiting. Something in my chest pulled tight at the sight of it before I even knew why. "Mom always leaves the light on," Kara said, looking at it, not at me. "For as long as I can remember. Even when I'm late. Even when she's already gone to bed." She said it lightly, but there was something underneath it. Something she was letting me hear on purpose. She says a dark porch is a house that gave up waiting. I didn't have words for what that did to me. I hadn't had a light left on for me since I was a boy. I put the truck in park. I meant to say goodnight, but Kara was already saying, "Come in for a second, she'll have made too much of something. She always does." And I was already unbuckling, because some part of me would not, drive away from that light. So I walked her up, keys still in my hand, one foot, honestly, already half turned back toward the truck, because that's who I was, a man always half ready to leave before anyone could ask him to stay. And the door opened, and the porch light caught her mother's face, and she looked at me like she already knew me. Eleanor. Warm eyes, flour on her apron, a dish towel in her hands. She looked at me the way you look at someone you've heard about across a dinner table for months, someone whose name has become familiar in your own kitchen. And she smiled and said that thing. "I was wondering when she'd bring you here." And behind me, I heard Kara go very still. Later inside, over coffee I hadn't planned to stay for, with the smell of cinnamon thick in the little kitchen, Eleanor pressed a tin of cookies into my hands for the crew, and at the door, as I was leaving, she murmured to Kara, not quite quietly enough for me to miss it, "He's exactly like you said." I drove home in the dark, past my own unlit porch, and for the first time in years I sat in the driveway and didn't want to go inside alone. "You didn't have to switch shifts for the Larkspur Crunch," I said to Kara a few days after. It was a guess, half a guess, but her face gave it away. Kara went very still. "Nina told you. She's proud of you," I said, not understanding yet, thinking it was about the work, about ambition, about wanting the big project on her name, reading it wrong. One last time. She just looked out the window, toward nothing, and said nothing at all, and I let it go, because I still didn't understand what I was standing so close to. The Larkspur client presentation was 3 weeks later, in a downtown event hall with 2 bright chandeliers and a bar in the corner, and that was the night it all came apart. Winning Larkspur meant a public reveal, the city, the press, the donors, everyone in one room to see the firm that would bring the old house back. Our whole team was there in our good clothes, nervous and proud, standing under those hard bright chandeliers with plastic cups of catered wine, waiting for the announcement. I stood near the back with Kara, the two of us a little apart from the noise, the way we always ended up, and for a few minutes I was almost happy. Not the careful, managed contentment I'd trained myself into over the last few years, but the real thing, the reckless kind. The drawings glowing behind us on the screen were half hers, and I knew it, and I wanted the whole room to know it. She kept catching my eye, and looking away, smiling, and I was starting finally, slowly, after 2 years of reading everything wrong, to let myself think about what that smile might actually mean, and to think that maybe, for once, a good thing might be allowed to just be good. Then I heard a laugh across the room that I would have known anywhere. A bright, carrying, performed laugh, the kind pitched to make a whole room turn, and a cold weight dropped into my stomach before I even turned my head. Because I knew before I saw her. Vanessa. She looked exactly the way she'd always looked, polished and certain, a champagne glass held like a prop, and on her hand, catching the chandelier light, was a ring the size of a decision. Beside her stood a silver-haired man I recognized from the program, Hugh Marlowe, of Marlowe Development, one of the major investors backing the Larkspur project. My ex-wife was engaged to a man who half owned the room I was standing in. For a moment I thought I might get through the night without it touching me. I was wrong. She saw me. Of course she did. She crossed the floor with that same old certainty, took in my off-the-rack jacket and my calloused hands, and smiled like she'd found something amusing left over from a past life. "Adam," she said. "God. You're really still doing the little houses thing." She said it fondly, which was worse than cruelly. "I always thought you'd get tired and come back to real work." I said something polite. I don't remember what. I only wanted her gone. But then her eyes moved past me, to Kara, and sharpened with interest, and I felt the whole night tilt. "And who's this?" "Kara Ellison," I said. "She's an architect on the project. One of the best we've got." Vanessa smiled at her, that same warm poison smile. "Of course she is, and she might have left it there. I've thought about that 100 times since how close we came to her just walking away. But Nina, sweet oblivious Nina, chose that exact moment to drift over with a glass of wine and, wanting to be friendly, to make small talk with the important stranger, said something light about the team, about how tight-knit we all were, about how funny it was that Kara had gone and traded half her schedule around just to be on Adam's late nights. She said it as a compliment. Look how devoted our people are. She had no idea what she was handing over. I watched Vanessa's face change. I watched her understand, in half a second, exactly what she'd been given. She turned it over once, testing the edge of it, and then she smiled wider, and she raised her voice just enough, that the little cluster of people around us went quiet to listen. "Wait." She looked from Nina to Kara to me, delighted. "She switched her whole schedule to be near you?" "Oh, Adam." A soft, theatrical laugh. "She engineered the whole thing. The car in the shop, the late shifts, the little ride home, the tin of cookies, I'd bet. She's been hunting you. And you didn't even see it." The word hunting landed in the room like something dropped on stone. I felt the people around us go still. I felt Kara go still beside me, the warmth of the whole evening draining out of the air between one breath and the next. And the terrible thing was how reasonable Vanessa made it sound. How smooth. Each word placed exactly where it would do the most damage. A professional taking apart something she couldn't stand to see me have. "That's not I started, and couldn't find the end of it. You swore you were done playing house." Vanessa's voice was gentle now, confiding, aimed to wound. "After me, you said you'd never do the whole thing again, the family, the little life. And here's some girl who arranged every step to reel you right back in, and you fell for it, because you're lonely, and she figured that out." She tilted her head. "I'm not being cruel, I'm being honest. Someone should tell you before you make a fool of yourself. And here is the thing I need you to understand, the thing that makes Vanessa dangerous in a way that pure lying never could be. She hadn't invented anything. That was her gift. She never needed to. Kara had switched the shifts." That was true. Kara's car really was in the shop that week. That was true. Kara had, in the smallest, most careful way, arranged to be close to me. All of it. True. Vanessa had simply taken every true and tender thing and sharpened it into a knife and handed it to me point first. And now I stood there holding it, bleeding, not sure what I believed. "Ask her," Vanessa said, spreading her hands to the little audience she'd gathered, smiling for the room. "Go on. Ask her if she moved the shifts." Everyone looked at Kara. Kara's face had gone white. She could have lied. It would have been so easy to lie, to laugh it off, to say Vanessa was being ridiculous. One small untruth and the moment would have dissolved, and we could all have gone back to our champagne. She didn't lie. "I did," Kara said. Quiet. Steady. Looking only at me. I moved the shifts, and Vanessa spread her hands even wider, as if the confession had proved her whole case, as if honesty were the same thing as guilt. She'd won the room. I could feel it, the little shift in the people around us, the way they looked at Kara now, the way a woman's carefulness curdles into something suspect the second someone powerful renames it. Kara looked at me for one more second, waiting to see what my face would do, waiting to see whether I'd hand the knife back to Vanessa or turn it around. And I, God, help me. I didn't say anything. I froze. 3 weeks of something warm and new, and one true sentence weaponized by a woman who knew exactly how to find the loneliest, most doubtful part of me, and I just stood there, silent, long enough for the silence to say something on its own. Kara set down her glass, very carefully, on the nearest table. "Excuse me," she said, to no one, to everyone, and she walked out of that bright, loud room with her back straight and her chin level, and she did not look back at me even once. The porch light of a person, I would think later. That's what she was. And I'd stood there and let someone try to blow it out. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I sat in my half-finished house with the lights off and the cold coming through the old windows, and I kept doing the thing I do with houses, taking the whole structure apart in my head, beam by beam, joint by joint, trying to find where the rot actually was. Because that's the trade. You don't guess. You don't panic and tear out a wall on a hunch. You find the true source of the failure, and only then do you know what to save. And every time I laid it out honestly, the answer came back the same, and it shamed me. Because it was so simple, I should have seen it standing right there in the event hall. Vanessa had handed me a true thing and called it a trap. But I kept turning the word over trap, and it kept not fitting. A trap is something you don't know you're in. A trap takes your choice away. What had Kara actually done? She'd rearranged a schedule so she'd have a reason to be near someone she cared about. She'd left a door open and waited to see if I'd ever walk through it. Every step of the way, the choosing had been mine. I chose to offer the ride. I chose to stay for coffee. I chose, every single time, and she never once took that from me. That's not a trap. That's the bravest thing a quiet person can do, make themselves a chance to be known, and then stand there, exposed, hoping. And Vanessa hadn't been protecting me from anything. She'd walked into a room, found the one new good thing in my life, and manufactured a doubt engineered to poison it. That was the actual manipulation, not the shift swap, the renaming of it. The truth hadn't hurt me. The hand holding the truth had. Once I saw it that clearly, I couldn't unsee it, and I couldn't stay in my dark house another hour. I drove across town on the 4th night. It was late and cold, the first real cold of the year, my breath fogging inside the truck until the heater caught up. The whole way there I was aware of a single question sitting in my chest, heavier than it had any right to be. Would the light be on? Because I understood, by then, what the light meant. A dark porch is a house that gave up waiting. If the porch was dark, I'd know I'd waited too long. That I'd stood silent, one beat too many in that bright room. That the door she'd left open for 2 years had finally, quietly closed. I turned onto her street, heart going like a hammer. The light was on, gold and steady against the dark, exactly as it had been the first night, and I had to sit in the truck for a moment with my hand over my mouth, because I hadn't known until that instant how frightened I'd been that it wouldn't be. I walked up the path. The porch boards creaked under me, that old house sound I know better than my own voice. I raised my hand to knock, and the door opened before I could. Eleanor, in her apron, as if she'd been waiting up, which of course she had. She looked at me for a long moment, reading my face the way her daughter always did. And then, without a word, she stepped back and called softly over her shoulder, "Kara," and left the two of us the porch and the light. Kara came to the door. She didn't step out. She stood there in the warm gold spill of it, arms crossed against the cold, her face carefully closed, and I understood I'd get exactly one chance to say this right. "You didn't trap me," I said. She blinked. "I've been telling myself for 3 days that you did, because that's the story someone handed me, and it was easier to believe the worst than to believe I might actually get to be happy. But it's not true. You didn't trap me." I made myself hold her eyes. "You made a door and left it open. That's not the same thing. That's the opposite thing." Kara's arms came uncrossed, slowly. Her eyes filled. "I was so scared you'd think it was small," she said, and her voice broke on it. "Switching a shift, leaving a coffee, just arranging little chances to be near you, because I never had the nerve to just say it." When she said it out loud in front of everyone, it sounded so calculated, pathetic. "I've loved you since about my 2nd week at Meridian, and I never found a single brave way to tell you, so I just left the light on and hoped." It wasn't small, I said, and I stepped closer so she'd have to believe me. It wasn't pathetic, and it wasn't calculated. It was the bravest quiet thing anyone's done for me in years. Do you understand that? Nobody's left a light on for me since I was a kid, Kara. Nobody's waited up. And you did it for 2 years, every day, in 100 small ways, and you never once asked me to notice. I'm sorry it took a cruel woman in a loud room to make me finally see it. But I see it now. I see you. She was crying now, and laughing a little at the same time, and I stepped up onto the porch, and she came into my arms like she'd been waiting to, which I finally understood she had. Behind her, through the doorway, I could see Eleanor pretending very hard to be busy at the sink, wiping a dry counter, giving us the fiction of privacy. And behind me, over both our shoulders, the porch light held steady, warm and gold, the way my father's always used to, saying the only thing it ever said, "Someone here was waiting for you. You are expected. You're home." We took it slow after that, on purpose. Neither of us wanted to rush a thing we'd both waited so long for. It's funny you'd think 2 years of quiet wanting would come pouring out all at once, a flood. It didn't. It came like restoration comes, one careful layer at a time. You don't slap new paint on a 100-year-old wall. You strip it back gently. You let it breathe. You take the time to do it right, so it lasts another 100 years. That's how we loved each other. Slowly, properly, built to hold. There were dinners at Eleanor's, more of them than I can count. She'd feed me like she was making up for 4 years of me eating standing over a sink, roast chicken, and real mashed potatoes and pie, that made me understand where Kara's carefulness came from. She'd tell me stories about Kara as a girl the year she tried to fix the neighbor's fence, and did it better than the neighbor, the way she'd always rescued the ugliest, most broken things and loved them stubbornly back to life. Kara would groan and hide her face, and I would fall a little further every single time. Eleanor and I got easy with each other fast, because in a strange way we weren't strangers at all. She'd known me long before she met me. She'd been hearing about me across that dinner table for 2 years. This quiet man her daughter couldn't quite work up the courage to bring home. The night I finally understood the full weight of that, I had to step out onto the porch and stand under the light for a minute just to gather myself. There were the long days on Larkspur, too, because we won it, the firm won it, and Vanessa's fiancé's money notwithstanding, the city chose the small firm that loved the house over the big ones that just wanted the contract. Kara and I spent the better part of a year bringing that grand old place back to life. There's no better way to learn a person than to restore something beside them. I watched her problem solve, watched her handle the days things went wrong, watched her be patient with rotted wood and impatient contractors, and never once with me. By the time the scaffolding came down, I knew her the way I know a house I've rebuilt with my own hands all the way through, foundation to roof. And what about Vanessa? People always want to know about Vanessa. The honest answer is, nothing. She married Hugh Marlowe that spring, somewhere expensive, and drifted back out of my life as fast as she drifted in. I heard about it the way you hear weather in another state, distant, irrelevant. Nothing to do with the warm rooms I actually lived in now. She'd tried to blow out the light, and it had stayed lit, and there was nothing left for her to do about that. I don't think about her much. I hope she's happy. I mean that in the mildest possible way. Let me jump ahead. A little over a year after that night on the porch, autumn again, the aspens gone gold all up the foothills. Larkspur House had its grand reopening. The whole city turned out, the ribbon, the speeches, the old house glowing like it had never been hurt a day in its long life. Kara and I stood at the back holding hands where the noise couldn't reach us, the way we always ended up. And I watched a building my father would have loved throw open its doors to a couple hundred people, and I thought about how a broken thing, given patience and the right hands and enough time, comes all the way back, not patched, not painted over, back. I looked at the woman beside me, who had loved me in silence long before I ever earned it, and I understood the house and I had that much in common. But that's not the moment I want to end on. The moment I want to end on is smaller, and it's the one that matters. That same fall, I noticed the lantern on Eleanor's porch had started to fail. The old brass fixture, the one that had lit my way up that path the first night and every night since the wiring was going, the light flickering and guttering, threatening to leave the porch dark. I couldn't have that. Of all the things in the world I could not allow, a dark porch on that house was near the top of the list. So I took it down, carefully, the way you handle something that matters more than its size, and I carried it home to my workbench. Over a couple of quiet evenings I did the one thing I truly know how to do. I stripped 100 years of tarnish off the brass until it glowed like new under the shop light. I rewired it by hand, every connection sound, made to last another lifetime, and on a cold gold afternoon with the leaves coming down and the whole street smelling of wood smoke, I brought it back to hang where it belonged. I was up on the little ladder with a screwdriver in the cold gold light, Kara steadying it below, Eleanor watching from the doorway with her arms folded and her eyes suspiciously bright. "Careful," Eleanor said, mock stern, as I set the last screw. "You put that thing up, Adam Kessler. You're responsible for keeping it lit. Forever. That's the rule in this family." I looked down at her. Then at Kara, who was laughing up at me, her hair the same warm color the light would be. The ring I'd given her 3 weeks earlier catching the last of the afternoon sun. "That's the idea," I said, and I reached over and flipped the switch, and the lantern came on clean and gold and steady, brighter than it had been in years, and something came all the way up and over in my chest, because I finally understood what had happened to me. For 30 years I'd thought I was a man walking through the dark toward other people's lights, fixing houses that would never be mine, coming home to a porch nobody lit. I'd gotten so used to being unweighted, for that I'd built a whole quiet life around it. But I hadn't been handed a light to walk toward. I'd been handed the switch. I was the one who got to leave it on now. For Kara, for Eleanor, for whoever, someday, might come driving up the right street in the dark, half turned back toward the truck, wondering if anyone was still waiting up. Somebody was. Somebody always would be. That was the whole thing I'd spent my life not knowing. I still fix old houses. I probably always will. But I understand my own work differently now. For years I thought I loved restoration because I loved broken things, or because it kept me close to my father. Both true, but the deeper truth is that I spent my whole life restoring homes for other people because some part of me had decided I didn't have one to come back to. I gave everyone else the warm lit windows I couldn't imagine for myself. I was wrong. It turned out someone had been building one for me the whole time, quietly, without demand. One small brave gesture at a time. A coffee, a remembered birthday, a switched shift, a light left on for a man who hadn't yet driven up the right street. Vanessa handed me a true thing sharpened into a knife. Kara handed me the same true thing, left whole and warm, and offered open-handed. That's the whole lesson, if there is one. The difference was never in the truth. It was in the hand that held it. I spent years believing no one had left a light on for me. The truth is, someone had, I just hadn't driven up the right street yet. So let me ask you something. Before you go, have you ever realized, too late, that someone had been quietly waiting for you all along? And if you were me, standing in that bright loud room, would you have trusted the light, or the woman who tried to blow it out? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story warmed something in you, if it made you think of a porch, a person, a light left burning for you somewhere, then leave the light on for it. Hit that like button, subscribe, so you don't miss the next one. And tell me down below, who's the person who always leaves a light on for you? Because somebody, somewhere, is still waiting up. Don't make them wait too long.